Well, firstly, it's a privilege to be here. I first became involved with Bobiwine when he was being held illegally and cruelly tortured in Arua. And we had to tell the world that these bastards who were torturing him don't deserve to be called a government anymore. They are not a government. You are the government. You are the people. Museveni is a criminal. He is a criminal who stole the gold from the DRC. He is a criminal who transports people across borders to steal their money, steal their cattle, and rape South Sudan. He is a criminal. He is a murderer. He has done more to destroy this region than any man alive. And yet, continuously, the United States and China kiss his feet. Why do they do that? Because Africa is being turned into the battlefield of the superpowers. And it is time for Africans to step up and stand up. It is time now, when the world is caught up in the tragedy in Ukraine, to tell the West, don't take us for granted. We do not support your war if you starve our people. We do not support your war if you make that bastard Museveni stay in power one more day. If the West says they're democratic, then screw Museveni. Do not support him. If the West says they're democratic, do not use mobile phone companies in Uganda that helped him steal the election. Do not buy the papers that helped him steal the election. If investors are coming to Uganda, do not invest in them if they are investing in Uganda while Museveni is in power. Every day we hear the word sanction. We're going to sanction this poor Russian. We're going to sanction that poor Russian. Let me tell you something. It's time to sanction Museveni and his gang of thieves. No dollars should flow into Uganda while he tortures innocents. It is time for a change in Africa. It is time that Western young people stop worrying about using the N-word and start understanding if Black lives are going to matter, they've got to matter with every person and not be left to watch Black young people getting killed trying to get a better future. We have got to do something about the institutional racism that is going on in Europe as we speak. But most importantly, we have to use the ICC, the African Union, and the institutions that presently exist to stop the thieving of votes that happen at every election, whether it's Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Uganda, the poor people of Cameroon who are living for decades under the dictator Biya. And it doesn't matter if these dictators are Black. That doesn't mean they're democratic. I'd prefer a white leader anytime if he gives people the right to vote. Don't excuse people because one day a long time ago they were revolutionaries, if today they're oppressors. It is time to judge people for what they're doing today. So I say to you with pride at what this political party has done, it is time to stand up. It is time to fight as the government that you are against those in opposition who have seized power in Uganda illegally. Thank you very much.
You know, he even left 1 minute on the table. He had a whole minute left. But you know, when I grow up, I want to be like Robert Amsterdam, right? I'm happy because as the moderator, I'm limited in what I can say. So I'm very happy to say that he said everything that I wanted to say if I was not the moderator. So thank you for that. All right, so now, audience, I'm going to go back to each of the speakers to see if what they learned from listening to each other. So hopefully I'll spend about 6 minutes here, and then I come to you, the audience, so you can become involved as well. So I go in the same order again. Sister, based on what you've learned here so far, what can you take back to help comrades in Zimbabwe? And you have 2 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, so for starters, like you said, it reads like an open book. So clearly, they say knowledge is power. And we clearly now have a clear understanding of how dictatorship governments work. So if we know how they work, we must know the solution. And I think we need to really work together intentionally towards freeing Africa. Because this is the venom that is across the continent, you know, from what Bob was saying, like it's everywhere. Tanzania, Cameroon, Uganda, Zimbabwe, everywhere is the same. We have people who are in prison right now. I know somebody who was in prison for 10 months and for blowing a whistle, literally like blowing a whistle during a demo. And they said that was inciting violence. So he was in prison for 10 months. So these kind of tactics, we now know about them. What we need to do together is to work out the next stage. What do we do? How do we work with other governments that have an interest in Africa? Because guess what? Africa is very rich. And the reason why these dictators get away with it is at the moment, they control our resources. So there is definitely an external interest in Africa. So how do we together use that interest towards our freedom? And that is where the conversation needs to begin. Because we know their books, we know what they do at elections, we know what they do every day. How do we work together to create a powerful African government in waiting? I've avoided using the word opposition there, did you see? So, you know, that's who we are. We are governments in waiting. The people have said, this is what we want. So how do we deliver what the people want, knowing what we know about the dictator governments and what they're capable of and what they can do? We now know that. Let's come together and create solutions, you know, because if we create a handbook to fight the dictator, that handbook can be used across Africa.
Okay, so the sister made a concrete proposal. She did not say it explicitly, but she's implying that we need to have a major conference of all, not opposition, but all governments in waiting. And I certainly would endorse that. Thank you, sister. Brother, you have 2 minutes as well. What have you picked up here from the comrades, and anything else that you want to say in the 2 minutes you have?
I will go to the legal jurisprudence, and because it speaks to the iota of what can be done in the times of civility, and that is the International Criminal Court. My challenge has been, one, the precedents have already been set where heads of state have been sanctioned. His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta and the Deputy President Ruto, they appeared before the International Criminal Court. And the same atrocities, because in Uganda, on international television, General Museveni is admitting that they murdered 54 Ugandans by a commando unit from Somalia. That alone is enough evidence that the International Criminal Court can use to have at least the minimum, let that matter be heard, whether investigated or heard, but there is enough evidence to November 19th, November 18th in Uganda, 2020. And the umbrella issue is what we have all talked about here. We need to have a unison umbrella for the struggle of our people. And this is not new. It is not going to be new also. It is only that our generations had went into sleep too early. We were complacent with the dictators because they also, by the way, the dictators we are having are third generation dictators. We had the dictators of the colonial masters. Then we went into the hands of those who had got independence. You know, many of those leaders were assassinated, and the General Museveni came in. So they have been using the same style, but then for us who are complacent to that. Now, facing a third generation dictator, you're facing somebody who is modern and has lessons from the other dictators. And I believe once we are together, we have an umbrella as a people, we can also push. How can the International Criminal Court of Justice, which handles damages for countries that have done wrong to other countries, find us culpable, and then the International Criminal Court gives a blind eye on the other side, and yet all these treaties are ratified on the same platform?
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, comrade. So before we come to Robert Amsterdam once again, I just want to add an observation to what Comrade Alex just said. In terms of the ICJ finding Uganda liable, essentially for what amounted to war crimes as well, the massacres, the plunder in the Congo, and awarding the Congo $10 billion in reparations. There was a very interesting article in the Wall Street Journal, and I hope journalists in Uganda can pursue this article, even though it was a few years ago. The article was on June 8, 2006, Wall Street Journal, and it had a very interesting information. It said the Congo used the same set of facts that the ICJ used to find Uganda liable and sent it to the ICC asking for prosecution. And so Dictator Museveni knows that he's a criminal because according to that article, he contacted Kofi Annan, who at the time was the Secretary General of the United Nations, and asked him to block that criminal investigation. Why would somebody who thinks he's innocent ask for a criminal investigation to be blocked? And Annan, according to the article, told him, I don't have the power to block that investigation. But it appears that somebody with the power to block that investigation did block it. And that is why he was never indicted like Omar Bashir of the Sudan. And that's why he's still running around killing people in Uganda and in neighboring countries. So journalists, enterprising journalists in Uganda, perhaps that's an angle that you should continue pursuing. We now invite Robert Amsterdam once again to give us a synthesis based on what he's heard from the other panelists so far and anything else he has to add. Since he left 1 minute on the table, if he wants, he can have 3 minutes instead of 2.
Well, I think there's something we all need to be careful of, because we talk about Museveni like he's one man, but he's not. He has a group of people with him. He has a son who is the murderer in chief. And I believe that's his official title. And there are people around him that need to be identified. Those people that support the financial infrastructure around Museveni need to be identified. We need to identify them. We need to name them. We need to shame them. We need to go to Washington and get them on the Magnitsky list for human rights violations. We need to document when these people go missing. They never go missing in your heart or my heart. It is the government that wants to bury them. And it is the duty of every Ugandan to document every missing person. It is the duty of every African to document every missing African. We cannot let men and women go missing in the 21st century. This cannot happen. There must be governance. There must be control. If there are judges who have been criminalized by the system, we must name them and shame them and go to the ICJ and go to the International Bar Association and say, this judge in Uganda is corrupt. We need to write their names. Naming and shaming matters. You talk about a government and you condemn a government and nobody gives a damn. But you talk about people by name. You mention young Museveni by name and all of a sudden people care. We have to get people to care. And the day that this government becomes government is when those individual people realize that the cost to them of continuing their plunder of Africa, the cost to them personally is too much to bear. That is when you become the government. So this documentation of the disappeared, and the documentation of the wrongly accused, and the documentation of the wrongly convicted, including which judges violated their oath to the Constitution to convict these people, all of this needs to be documented. And it is up to you and the people of Uganda to get on with that job. Thank you very much.
All right, sisters and brothers, another round of applause to all the panel members, please. So you heard clearly, each one of you needs to get a notebook. You need to open a file on your computer, and that is the document. You're going to put this information about people that are disappearing. Put that information, and even though he didn't specifically say it, you know, there's no reason why you can't send it to him as well. But I also have a publication, as you know, and you're free to send that information to me as well at Black Star News. So now let's open it to the Q&A. We have about 10 minutes left. Questions from the audience, please. Let's try to get short questions so we can get as many people as possible involved. Avoid making long statements, please. If somebody takes 5 minutes, then it means you only have 5 minutes left. So keep it to the point, please. And identify yourself too, and then ask your question.
Zakayo Nsubugachivili from the chapter of Florida in the USA. My question is straight to the point. If we have a law against committing or omitting, commission and omission of committing a crime, then abetting or being a conspiracy to committing a crime, are we considering dragging the European Union to court? Can we consider that as an alternative to? Can we consider taking the African Union to court? Do we also consider taking the International Criminal Court to court?
Okay.
For not doing what they are supposed to do? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, brother. I think this question is, given all these institutions that are failing to do their duty in terms of addressing the issue of justice for Uganda and victims of this dictatorship, can we take them to be judged somewhere else? So let's see what the panelists have to say about this. Is that mic on? We'll go down this way.
Well, I can tell you quite honestly that it is very difficult to take the ICC to court, because the only court you can take them to is their own. And I believe the more effective route would be to go to the UN Security Council and other international bodies who have a role to play with the ICC to make those complaints. And more importantly, I think, in terms of the discussions we've had in the panel, it is important that we find an institution that makes the protection of the rights of political parties in Africa a priority. Right now, there is none. Right now, the institutions in Africa rubber stamp a bunch of old men staying in power. And that has to change. And I think what you want is accountability. And what we have to do is get accountability through political means. It can't be done through the courts.
Definitely, it is extremely impossible. But one, its existence and our membership is we are signatories to that, and it assists the regime if it is doing horrific and tragic atrocities to the citizens. If their members are not being charged, then they will always use it as an escape route. So it will be very difficult. But as we have said, it is important that we pick the history and progress from the history, because we are the ICC has superior bodies that can check its existence, because we are signatories also to those superior charters. But still, you know, in my own eyes, I think there is an international conspiracy, or I would call it criminal negligence, of certain individual actors on the European and American continent to keep dictatorships in Africa. And they tend to be more powerful. But the challenge is not them. The challenge is us, the Africans. We can fight this if we are united, resilient, and committed, because we have enough energy and resource to fight this. If we know this is modern slavery, we will fight it and we will win this war. Let's forget about courts. The judicial processes are rotten now. And they are not only rotten in our individual dictatorship countries, but also even on the international platform.
All right, so Sister Chennai, I'm going to tell you to pause. I want to invite another question, and then you can answer the new one plus this question that's on the floor right now. So let's come to a sister, and then we'll come back this way. And remember, keep it short and boom, to the point.
Yeah, I'm Comrade Hidayah from Amsterdam. I have two questions. One is about our sisters in the Middle East. They say there's a lot of money that is being put in place to kind of help out our sisters, but we never see anybody helping them. I don't know who is supposed to monitor this money. Secondly, it's about Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. We know this man is full of lies. We know this man is full of not telling the truth. Apparently, we know him as Tibo Habora. What if we report him to the ICC and then he comes and says, oh, that's not my name. My name is Tibo Habora. Thank you.
Okay, was that a question or a comment?
It's a question, like, what if he comes and then he says, you reported a wrong person. I'm not Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, I'm Tibo Habora.
Sister, they know him very well. Okay, I think the first question was more addressed to the first panel that discussed the issue of enslavement of so-called workers. Those are not workers. Those are people that are enslaved. And I think Senor noted it earlier, that there are members of the government that benefit from this relationship. But before I come to the next question from the audience, let's see if Sister Chennai wanted to make a point, since you didn't get to respond to the earlier question. Please.
Sure. So it's an interesting one when we look at institutions and think, okay, do we take them to court? What do we do with them? But what we must never lose sight of is people power is our power. And I will tell you why I'm saying that. So here I am as an individual. What have I been able to do for democracy agenda in Africa? I started a petition. It wasn't very popular. I think maybe I got to about 30,000 or so. But by that time, what we managed to achieve, we engaged Amnesty International, we engaged the United Nations, the different committee groups. We engaged the UK government. We engaged the European Union. and they presented at the African Union. Now, one thing I will tell you about dictators, they don't like being embarrassed. They don't like it. They don't like it when they see that a lot of people are talking about their dirty laundry is being aired out in public. They don't like it. So collect the evidence. If you want to petition the ICC, do it. Do it. Get 5 people around you to support you in that endeavor. Go on social media. Talk about it. Send them emails. Do you know that when you send someone an email, in the democratic space, they have to respond. Let them, there's a story in the Bible, I think it's in Matthew, about a woman who is being persecuted by a judge, and she's just a civilian. And it says that she tired him so much that in the end, the judge gave in. So that is our job. We should tire them. We should never give up. If we know that there's a case that whether it's Bob and his practice that have taken it to the International Criminal Court, our job is to make as much noise about it. You do something, because you know, when you do something, even if you're just one, you can open so many doors that it equates thousands. So don't wait to say, okay, this is the blocker, but somehow there's another way of circumventing it. You have a problem with the African Union, write to them. You might think that you're too weak, but there are other organizations. We have a huge civic society that is being paid to do these things. But if you don't tell them and you don't ask them, then it won't get done. Send them one email, send them another one, and another one, until eventually the director of Amnesty International said, we need to look at this case, Chennai. We have seen your emails, because I had sent that many. And when it turns out that in the end, the person that I was then connected to is someone I went to school with. How is that for globalization? So together we are working to help, to protect our comrades on the front line. But we have to do something. We can't just look at the barriers and think it's too big. We can't take the ICC to court, but we can petition. We can write to them. And the governments will ask you, who do we need to engage here? I say, I need you to engage Cyril Ramaphosa. And when you have done it, can you tell me that you've done it? I can't get to him, but you can. And they do it. And they tell you about it. So never look at a problem and think, oh, this is it, it's too big, I can't tackle it. Here, around this room, just the people in this room, you could really bring a change. If you set out and you said, one case of someone who is in prison for 2 years, I am going to do something about it. You can start a Facebook page and record the atrocities. On the 1st of August, 2018, 6 people were killed using live ammunition in broad daylight in Harare whilst they were coming to work, because the government didn't want to announce the election. So they killed 6 people in broad daylight with live ammunition. And I put every picture, every case, everything that I could find on one Facebook page. And every year on the 1st of August, I bring that back to life. Because you know what? Justice for those 6 people will be served one day. It might not be today, but it's coming. And I will keep that alive. So we need to have that mindset. When we say people power is our power, think about it seriously and put that into action. And all these institutions, they will never beat us. Even if they don't want, African Union doesn't want to talk about it, they have to talk about it when we talk about it. Because the dictators, they hate being embarrassed. And I know every time we start a petition and we get it moving, I know that that person is going to be released from prison now. I can tell you, I can almost predict it. When I can see that the UK government is now in their House of Commons, they are talking about Zimbabwe. Sorry. And they sent me something to say, we are talking about Zimbabwe, and we make it public. We know that that person is going to go on bail.
Okay, sister.
Thank you.
Sisters and brothers, I have a suggestion. I think we should adopt her as a Ugandan. What do you say? Yeah? Approved. I think there is one more question here. Maybe we'll wrap up with 1, 2, and then, did I hear a protest? Okay, so I'm sorry, in the interest of democracy. 1, 2, 3, but all of you keep it short. Please keep it short, because we've literally run out of time.
Thank you so much, panelist, Dr. Robert Amsterdam. We are very, very grateful for being with us, for you being with us here, and very inspired by your words. And of course, the other panelists, Madame Chisambere. I'm sorry, I'm muttering your name because I'm not looking at it. But thank you so much. Your experience,
okay,
exactly
brother.
Experience. But my question,
you used up your time already.
Yeah,
so
okay.
Go ahead, question.
Okay, sorry. All right. So my question is, in unity, in a spirit of unity, because we're suffering the same problems, Zimbabweans, Ugandans, Cameroonians, is there a provision within international law whereby countries in Africa that are suffering the same kind of issues, where we can file a joint petition to the ICC? You know, we get together and say, you know, Cameroon, Uganda, Zimbabwe, we have this problem, and we are petitioning the ICC.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's see what the lawyer has to say. Thank you for that question.
Well, the lawyer will tell you that there are provisions in various African regional organizations like COMESA, SADC, ECOWAS. There are those types of provisions. Not necessarily in terms of the ICC, because the ICC is dealing with crimes against humanity. So it's outside their remit. But within the regional organizations, it's certainly possible. And I certainly believe that those political parties in Africa that are the government but are being deprived of power should get together along with other parties that are in opposition as soon as possible to come up with a strategy to deal with this lacuna in the law that has left them exposed to the likes of Museveni.
Thank you for that question. We go to the second, and then we go to the final question. Keep it brief, please. Identify yourself and then ask the question.
Yeah, my name is Dradenia. Mind is straight. What provisions can you, why are the Ugandan team, the NUP or civil societies, not engaging the working groups or the UN, which apparently looks to be more effective with the states? And also there's a peer review, although it comes once in 4 years. I think I've got some experience whereby even an individual civil society, for example, at the meeting, writing to committee against torture, enforced disappearance, and all this, I think that's one of the best way to engage the UN to directly work with the working group. And you can talk to them. Why don't we do that?
All right, thank you for that. The specific UN groups, so each one of you can take a bite of that if you want.
Well, you're 100% right. The UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention that our firm has used many times is a very effective working group. You have to prove arbitrary detention, which is a high standard, but also the Convention Against Torture is very effective and again can be used. All of these require evidence and skill to put together properly, but they're all very effective tools that should be used at every opportunity. And Uganda has the benefit of Chapter 4, I think, it had been suspended, I think, at some point. I know, certainly they were an excellent group that were pursuing many of these remedies.
The fact of solutions, and if you listen to everybody here, only speaks that no one should have a monopoly of what is right to be done to take out the dictatorship in Africa. We must all find the answers, but what is important is the connectivity. So, because connectivity will even effectively cut down the cost of putting it to practice. The UN is not in Africa. The bringing up of evidence, the protection of the witnesses as well. it will not be an easy process, but definitely it is something that we need to re-energize about, and we need to put more effort. We shall definitely pick it up to see where it stopped, how it is supposed to go further. I think we need to do everything humanly possible, leaving no stone unturned, to see that we liberate ourselves.
My answer is quick. My answer is quick to my brother. I would say, do it. If you believe that this might work, you can do it. And if you did something, whether it was the convention of working group, the one on tortured rights or whatever, if you want to do that, do it. And if you did it on the same case, and I did it on the same case, and then we also lobbied the civic society, and also the movement did the same, then we have power. Because often we have this thing that we look at, and this is one of the tactics that the dictator works. They try and just distract us. So there's a lot happening. So, you know, in Zimbabwe, they'll be taking the opposition, the government in waiting to court. They'll be arresting our senior members. At the same time, some people are being violated over here. So you find that for the movement itself, they are so busy. So if we, the people of interest, are then saying, well, why are they not doing that? Why are they not doing this? But we should instead look at it as our responsibility. If there is a gap, there's something that you see that should be done, do it.
We have a question from the Honorable Member of Parliament, Uganda, part of the government in waiting, Comrade Muwonge. You have a question.
Thank you to our panelists. My name is Muwada Nkunyenje, Member of Parliament, Chadondo East, also Shadow Minister of Foreign Affairs for the government in waiting. Council, Amsterdam, you mentioned about a typical experience. You seem to appreciate the democratic and governance challenges we have as Uganda. I wanted just to draw one particular reference to the National Unity Platform. After the previous election, which was actually rigged, our party President Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert, together with party leadership and country leadership from the government in waiting, including myself and my neighbor here, Honorable Nyeko Derek. We accompanied the president as we filed a petition with the United Nations Human Rights offices within Uganda, detailing atrocities committed by the regime. Little did we know that our petition was lacking the atrocities that were to be committed that day. Because that same day, I remember I was standing behind the president. Army men came with the batons and sticks in uniforms, gazetted uniforms, beat up everyone. Actually, my neighbor was broken. His arm was broken. His car was shattered. He just recovered from wounds in hospitals. From hospital. Now, as we are addressing the aspect of joining hands in fighting African dictatorship, draw more reference in terms of best practices within a country. Yes, we are doing, and we are moving forward. Personally, I represent Chadondo East, where my party president resides, who is also the elected president of Uganda. We prefer to call it State House Magere. But many times, it is a detention center by the regime. We find a blockade, he's arrested and detained inside his own home without notice or without an enabling law. Now, could you draw more reference in terms of the best approaches we can explore as opposition in dealing with equal access to justice within and internally? Because even with diplomatic representation, I want to put it on record that it is hard to access the offices of the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. And it is surprising equally, even when we were beaten outside their offices, they did not come out to speak about it, even the UN office or representative. Now, this remains also doubting as challenges. Want to learn from you best practices, especially dealing with internal mechanisms, as opposed to also the external mechanism. I thank you.
Okay.
Well, I think this is a situation where you have to go indirectly. And one of the places that you need to go indirectly is to the United States government. Most importantly, the Defense Department of the United States government that supplies Museveni with weapons. One way to embarrass, as my friend said, thugs like Museveni and the people around him is to make a complaint to the American Department of Defense, a very specific complaint about their supply of arms, equipment, and training to the Ugandan police and military, which are being used illegally to engage in crimes against humanity and violations of human rights. A well-documented petition to the Department of Defense stating that they are complicit in gross human rights and political violations, copied to the State Department, the President, the Vice President, the Congressional Black Caucus, setting all of those out in detail. That would go a long way. And one of the lessons of my working in Africa for, sadly to say, 50 years is that you get things done indirectly. The Americans have a massive military investment in Africa. Go through the military as one way of getting your voices heard.
Thank you. All right, give a round of applause. All right, sisters and brothers, we now come to a close. We have, you see that? That's an NRM thing going around here. All right, sister, you have the final say. We've run out of time, so please keep it brief and to the point.
I salute everybody present in their respective capacity. My name is Kiseka Joan. How can NUP or any other organization help us sensitize people at all levels so that everybody can know what is happening? For example, I find it that the dictators are using I don't know how I can term it.
No, it's okay. Take your time. Really.
Yeah, I find it that what measures do they take to erect someone new in that position? And there are a lot of things we do not know, how the revenue is being collected and the manners in which it is collected. So we end up like we need a lot of sensitization, but how can it be done?
All right,
so that we are not kept back.
All right, I think the focus of your question is financial transparency. Yes. And it's sort of related to, I think, Nico, could you take that, right? It's related to what Sister Chinai also said, somehow, in terms of how the regime uses financial control over the opposition to literally incapacitate them. So you want to handle that question, and then we'll get you as well? Yes. Okay, so we're wrapping it up. We're wrapping it up in 3 minutes now. So go ahead if you want to take that question. And then, actually, since he has to leave, let him go ahead first, and then we wrap.
Look, very simply, that's probably the key question in terms of gaining power. And you can only do that through documenting some of the illegal transactions, which are not hard given Uganda and the theft of minerals